Hi, I'm Solly Benjamin. I head the faculty development and the postdoctoral program here at IIHS. And I'd like to talk to you about the doctoral research workshop, which we will be having between the 8th and 10th of January, early next year. The main emphasis of the doctoral workshop is to address two ranges of people coming in. One is people who are just starting off on the doctoral program. That's a kind of a track one situation. And others who have, after their dissertation, after their field work, come back to initiate the writing process. We feel that addressing this in terms of the specificities of the doctoral process is really extremely important to be really supportive to people who are in a doctoral program. Apart from these two tracks, we do have a common set of plenaries which emphasize essentially larger issues about the doctoral process. Now, one of the key things which I may mention, why is a doctoral program in the urban different from other doctoral programs? Here we feel that one is that it is necessarily interdisciplinary, and secondly, especially given IIHS's own engagement with actual projects in the field all over India, but also with its global connections to some of the most interesting places of urban knowledge creation, is links to actual practices on the ground. So these two aspects of cities, the fact that stuff is going on the ground in a very dynamic way, and that it is necessarily interdisciplinary, and the other issue that we are talking about, stuff happening through projects, programs, policies, confronting wider city processes around land, around livelihoods, around shelter, housing, around politics of governance. All of these open up doing a doctoral program in the urban to be a very kind of exciting space. The workshop is really therefore focused around this sort of urban excitement, if one might put it, where in the track one we really focus on introducing certain core urban literatures. At IIHS here we have an excellent library with not just hardbound copies but also online systems which is accessible to the public. Second is we have a media lab, a word lab, geospatial labs, and urban informatics. So this grouping of 4 support systems becomes central to doctoral scholars who are coming here to spend those 4 days and explore IIHS as a wider space. It's also important here that a lot of the interesting turn in the urban is, and I'm saying this specifically with regard to these 4 supportive facilities, is to really look at these not just supportive background kind of realms, but in what way they can become part of the foreground. For example, if someone is looking at public health, then to what extent one can look at historical sources of how, say for example, the plague moved through Hong Kong, Calcutta, Bombay, Alexandria and Egypt, and on to Mexico City between the late 19th and early 20th century. But then also looking at media archives, what was happening in Hong Kong during the SARS period, in the 90s. So in a sense, what we are trying to emphasize is that researching the urban therefore becomes much more interdisciplinary across the conventional boundaries of social sciences, between architecture, urban planning, and into the social sciences of history, geography, sociology, anthropology, but also bridging further on into the humanities, looking at a wider range of subject areas. The first track includes a substantive part of how do you prepare yourself for going to the field. So once you've finished your exam processes and once you think you've identified some range of research questions, then how do you construct those in terms of researchable units, researchable processes? How do you organize your data? How do you translate the issues you want to concern with into specific sets of doable questions? So that becomes a very central part of the track 1. The track 2 is equally exciting, because on one hand a person, he or she, would have finished the research process, explored certain experiences on the ground, starting off with questions that were framed much earlier in the research, but finds that the field tells them something very different. And then the excitement comes that how do you reframe what you started off with in a reflective way based on what you found on the ground. Because cities are dynamics, earlier literatures which we thought were definitive canons are getting broken down, and they're getting changed or broken down because of what's happening on the ground. So I think the excitement here of doing a doctorate, which the intent is to generate new knowledge, not just replicate the old, is to really take the field, the ground seriously. And as part of that, the track 2 is really a setting to come back to what you have discovered. And what does that tell you about theory? What are the new kind of ways of conceptualizing the urban, which then becomes a interesting and substantive output of your own particular PhD. This is also important because in track 2, we also emphasize the logistics, the practicalities, and also the conceptual basis of both publishing and also curriculum development. These are two things which, apart from your specific PhD thesis, are central to what would get you a job whether it is in academia or a job with a range of development organizations, including the media today, connected to the urban. This becomes important because if we think about publications in today's climate, it really has to be fairly creative, innovative, and something that really highlights the new stuff that is being discovered in the PhD process. Publishers are looking for that. They're also looking for stuff which catches the eye of a much wider audience and not just a narrower academic one. Today, with the use of media, with the incorporation of various interdisciplinary references, all of these make for a sort of interesting output of the PhD process. So I would say that one of the big advantages of attending the IIHS doctoral workshop is, on one hand, its specificity, B, all the range of these more general conceptual issues that we would be discussing. The final thing I would like to say is that because it is connected to the other big IIHS event, the Urban Conference, is we are having faculty from all over the world. And so thus the PhD workshop is a good opportunity to meet people, many of them top scholars who are coming to spend some time in Bangalore, have discussions both in a formal setting but also informal setting, and explore different kind of perspectives and different kind of experiences. So this is the third really important reason why the doctoral workshop here at IIHS becomes quite an important event. Thank you.